And a very, very good afternoon, all. Welcome to Ken Forrester Vineyards, the home of the infamous and notorious money laundering Chenin blanc maker, seated beside me as we join you right around the world in celebration of Drink Chenin Day, which should really be a public holiday here in South Africa. I'm not sure why it's not, but it is a day to celebrate. I've got with me Ken. I've also got Cathy Van Zell, Master of Wine. And what you can't see on the screen, I've got an extraordinarily attractive and youthful and good-looking collection of Chenin blanc drinkers joining us today. So warm welcome, guys, to all of you, and thank you for joining us, Ken, for what's a really, really special day. And I think just by way of introduction, it's worth, from your perspective as the high priest of Chenin blanc in South Africa, explaining why this grape is so important to the South African wine industry, to the South African wine story.
Yeah, Chenin blanc is ubiquitous with South Africa. We believe that it arrived on the early ships that brought the first grapes out to South Africa. And it's been here ever since. We know, in fact, having worked with the University of Montpellier and having done some samples and testing, and they took cuttings back to France with them, that some of the Chenin blanc we have in this country is now extinct in France. It no longer even occurs there. Chenin blanc has been the backbone of the South African wine industry for the longest time. It made the most amazing brandy. It produced wonderful spirits, base wine. It produced wonderful wines. It was possibly the backbone of something as ubiquitous as Liebestein. It produced possibly Paul Perlet, and it's been there all along, but nobody noticed it, the Cinderella grape. Nobody really noticed it for who she really is. And we picked this up about 25 years ago, and a group of people have been working away, banging away at producing great Chenins like the ones you've got in front of you today. And these are here today because essentially we joined up with Japan first thing, and these are the Chenins, some of the Chenins available in Japan.
All right, well, we're going to be crossing to Japan in just a moment. We've got a very cool young sommelier who's going to be joining us, and it's a country, a culture, a food, a wine that you know particularly well, Cathy. Before we have a look at that, though, and meet our very special guest from Japan, Chenin blanc for you. You celebrate as a great wine aficionado, a great wine authority. What is it about Chenin that's so special for you?
I love Chenin's versatility. I love the fact that it goes so well with sushi and Japanese food, which is now amongst my favorite cuisine in the world. And I just think that it also brings a little bit of a link as well to the old world, to the Loire, where is the home of Chenin. I'm a bit of romantic in that way. I like to still think that we have a link to the old world, but we're also, it's such a forward-looking grape in that it's helping us meet new cultures and make new friends. Certainly it's helped me make new friends in Japan.
Well, we're all going to meet a new friend now, meet a new culture in the shape of a young Japanese sommelier who was Japan's Sommelier of the Year in 2020. He's besotted with South African wine, as you're about to discover. And what we're going to do is meet him. He's going to tell us a little bit about sushi. Cathy will then back it up, and sushi in the context of wine. We'll be hearing from him twice during the course of the session. And then after that, we'll be trying some of the wine, trying it with sushi, and both trying the wine in its own right, but then seeing just how well it pairs with the wine and how that concert works out. So let's head over to Japan and meet a wonderful young man called Taku.
Hi everyone, hope you're enjoying the Chenin Blanc Day. I'm Taku Iguro, Best Sommelier 2020 of Japan and the finalist of the Worcester Sommelier Cup. Today I am going to talk about sushi and dumplings. Both are very familiar in Japan, and of course sushi is a very traditional cuisine and made by raw fish and vinegar rice. So when I was a child, I remember that my parents take me to a sushi restaurant when we were like celebrating something. So, and if it's not like a conveyor belt sushi, like itamae, the sushi chef is in front of you, it's a real treat for adults too. So to avoid the fishy smell, one way is to use the soy sauce. It's already known that it can mask the fishy smell, and this is caused by the compound called melanoidin included in the soy sauce. And this compound is created by the process of making the soy sauce, and it's known as the byproduct of Maillard reaction. chemical reaction between the amino acid and reducing sugars. If you study wine, you may hear this word Maillard reaction in the process of like sparkling wines. The soy sauce also has like the similar oxidized, caramel-like sweet and savory flavor, just like in vintage champagne. Okay. And another way to avoid the fishy smell is to use the wasabi. Wasabi is known for that like pungent, spicy taste, but the main reason to use wasabi is to eliminate that like the unwanted fishy smell. It can also add freshness to the taste too, and especially it goes very well with like fatty fishes like tuna, yellowtail, and salmon. The fat covers pungency of wasabi, so if you're a fan of wasabi, you should put more into like the fatty fish, and vice versa. You should use small amount of wasabi in your lean white fishes, or like scallop and squids. You guys already know that sushi and Chenin Blanc is a great combination, but don't forget the dumplings or the pot stickers. We call it gyoza in Japan, and we usually serve it with like the soy sauce and chili oil. But I would like to recommend fresh lemon, and grind black pepper. So like the citric acidity in the lemon and the high acidity of the Chenin Blanc will counterbalance each other, and the black pepper will add another like flavor to the pairing.
Effective and everything's been. Cathy, you spent a lot of time out there, and there are probably people in the room, people watching, thinking, hang on, Chenin Blanc, wasabi's spicy, it's ferocious. How can you possibly drink wine with it? You spent a lot of time over there, and you'd be a strong advocate of sushi going with Chenin Blanc.
Absolutely. The thing to remember though is that in Japan, they don't use nearly as much wasabi as we do. In particular, in some of the high-end restaurants, it's etiquette to allow the chef to actually spice your fish for you with the wasabi. So the only way that you know in a high-end restaurant if you're allowed to put the wasabi into your soy sauce and stir it up to give it a bit of heat is if the chef deliberately puts a little bit on the table for you. If it's not there, don't ask for it, because it's akin to asking sending a dish back to a 3 Michelin star chef and saying, please, could I have some salt? Similarly, the other thing that I found that was quite interesting when I went to a high-end sushi restaurant, I was taught that you also never dip the rice into the soy sauce. What you've got to do is neatly use your chopsticks and delicately and dexterously turn it over, your nigiri over, and the nigiri is the one that's formed by hand and then has the meat draped on top of it, and then you're just supposed to flavor the meat with a little bit of the soy sauce. And in fact, in a lot of high-end sushi restaurants, they'll give you a different sauce that's particularly matched to a piece of meat.
So part of today, we're going to be testing all of you to just make sure that you've got that absolutely right in terms of a very un-South African way of eating sushi. Ken, sushi, Chenin Blanc. Today's a great celebration of versatility and what Chenin Blanc can do. But this is a really cool reminder of something people might not immediately be thinking of as a combination, and discovering just how well together it goes.
Dan, it's a marvelous combination, and more people really need to discover it, because Chenin Blanc in this realm is the most forgiving wine possible. Forgiving on your palate. Chenin Blanc will neutralize that spice that you've got, that heat from the wasabi. It'll neutralize the power of the pickled ginger. It'll neutralize the soy and still work with the meat, with the fish that you're getting. So Chenin is just a natural fit. It's a great match with Chenin Blanc. It really, really is. But Chenin with sushi is really just perfect.
We've got another visit to Taku to make in just a moment. He's going to talk us through the Chenins themselves, and then we can charge into them, as I'm sure you're all very excited to do. Before we do that, though, you've spent so much time in Japan. You know the world of culinary Japan so intimately. What are some of the highlights of the trips, the journeys, the meals that you've had over there?
I've got some photographs to show you, if I may.
Please do.
Okay, let's see that come up. And I will come over here. So I was invited to go to Japan to attend the graduation celebrations of Kenichi Ahashi, who was the first Japanese master of wine. And I had been his mentor for his last Master of Wine examination, the research project, which we may talk about a little bit later, but the topic of his research project was what are the wines that are most often drunk in high-end sushi markets of restaurants in Tokyo. So quite an apt thing for our discussion today. And after his really grand graduation, you can see that he's got a faux chrysanthemum on his chest there. I was given a white one because I was regarded as part of the family, and lesser celebrities at his graduation were given pink ones. We went across to visit some wineries north of Tokyo, and this is the very first Japanese restaurant I went to, and it's one of my most memorable meals. I thought I'd show it to you. So this young man at the back is the chef, and he was an absolute personality of note. He would leave the town at 3 o'clock every morning, travel an hour to the coast, get in his little fishing boat, and go and catch the fish that he was going to serve to you. And then later in the evening, he would come back, prepare that fish, and serve it to you literally fresh out of the ocean. And his restaurant was not a high-end sushi restaurant where they give you one little piece of beautifully prepared sushi at a time. He served en famille because he was in a tiny little village where lots of families lived. So he here put all the tuna on a plate, and then it was really kind of like any family meal. It was just dive in as soon as you could with your chopsticks, grab what you got, and you ate. Next slide. These were some of the interesting meals that I was introduced to on that day. I was asked to guess what this was. I thought it was brains. The answer is sperm. I was asked to guess what this is, and I got that one right. Yes, those are the eggs from the female fish. That one's over there. And then there he is showing me the meat that I ate for the very first time. He'd only caught that flying fish in the sea that morning, maybe 6 or 7 hours before I ate it. Okay. And there just some more of how he was serving his sushi. So not really high-end sushi. He was also interesting because you can tell from the rather rustic appeal of the plates, in that pottery was his hobby. So when he wasn't fishing and cutting up fish to serve it in his restaurant, he was actually making the pottery dishes. And it was just such a wonderful story. I wanted to buy them and bring them all home, and him included. This is what a high-end sushi restaurant looks at. It's the first that I went to. And this is the counter at the back in which you sit. Just a straight stripe of people with one head chef who sits behind there, and he rolls everything for you. And then 6 or 7 sous chefs making sure the rice is of the right consistency and that you've got enough wasabi. And these are some of the exotic things that you get to eat. They seldom in high-end sushi restaurants serve you the maki, which we know as the roll. And when they do, they seldom actually roll it out, but rather roll the sushi into little balls and then fold the nori or the seaweed around it, and then fill the top up with the meat. Oh, this was gorgeous. This was a kind of a mackerel type of fish that they cut open so that you could get the ginger sauce into. Yes, high-end sushi, high-end drinks. Okay, Christina will get to the... there's my friend. That's June Ito. Her husband ran a wonderful wine bar in Tokyo. And here's my sushi chef at work. And he's literally cutting on a counter that's slightly dropped below the one on which he puts the sushi for you to eat. And this is another quirk of the Japanese. If you don't watch your cell phone, they steal your cell phone and they take funny photographs of themselves. And you discover these in your hotel late at night when you try to see what you were doing. Mr. Ito here is sitting on the toilet, pretending to be asleep for me. Yeah, that is really naughty. I did go, just to show you, sometimes in South Africa we regard sushi as tempura. It's not. This is the tempura chef. All he did was serve us tempura, and he was 85 years old and still working. And then some more of the exotic things. It's not quite your tuna and salmon roses, is it? My particular favorite, it looks like something from The Alien, the movie The Alien with Sigourney Weaver. It's actually a clam, and it was absolutely delicious. Really lovely. The sushi, I don't know if this picture does it justice, but you can see his hands are actually red and swollen from making so many sushi that evening. Okay, Christine, if you can just go through them and I'll quickly show you. That is my breakfast the morning after the night before. All of that just for one person. And that is why I love Japan and why I love Japanese food.
That's a wonderful, wonderful selection of images. Thank you very much indeed, Cathy. We're going to be delving into not quite such an exotic range of sushi, but some great sushi nonetheless, and pairing it up with the Chenin. So what we thought we'd do is we'd go back to Taku and we'd get his thoughts on why the 4 particular Chenins that we have today work so well with Japanese fare. So let's go back to our sommelier in Japan.
So let's talk about Chenin Blanc and sushi pairing. For sushi, we traditionally matches with sake. The reason that sake matches with sushi is not the fish itself. It's the secret is in the rice vinegar. Usually the rice is seasoned with the vinegar and sugar and salt, and the sake itself doesn't have that high acidity just like in wine, and have a touch of like residual sugar, the sweetness. So the round and mellow texture of sake matches with this sour rice. Just like this is just like a classic German Riesling. It's the harmony of the sweetness and the high acidity. So do you think it's hard to match sushi with the Chenin Blanc? The answer is no. Especially the high acidity Chenin Blanc is a great accompaniment with sushi. And even in Japan, many of the Michelin-starred sushi restaurants are serving white wines with their sushi. As a sommelier, I have a great belief matching Chenin Blanc and sushi. And you know that there's many type of Chenin in South Africa, so it's easy to cover up all the type of sushi. And these are the 4 different styles of Chenin which you can find in South Africa. Alright, so the first wine is the Raats Original Chenin Blanc from vintage 2019. This is a very nice, pure, vibrant Chenin Blanc with no oak. It has a nice straightforward characteristic and this crisp texture and a nice phenol grip matches with like lean texture fishes, just like boiled prawn or like boiled octopus. Alright, so the next wine would be the Secatul from Badenhorst Family Wines from vintage 2020. Different from Raats, it has a like nice citrus and creamy texture that will match with more fatty fish like yellowtail with yuzu citrus. And instead of soy sauce, you can use a pinch of salt to enhance a nice citrus flavor of Chenin. And the third wine will be Hope Margaret from Beaumont Family Wines. And this wine is from Bot River region, vintage 2019. This wine has a nice lively acidity with a saline touch, and it also has that smooth and savory texture. This umami can matches with strong umami taste of fatty tuna roll wrapped with nori seaweed, which also has a strong umami compound. And last but not least, the FMC from Ken Forrester Wines. This is from Stellenbosch, vintage 2019. This wine has a beautiful tropical fruits with exotic spices. And there's a touch of dried apricot too. And this oily texture and touch of residual sugar will matches with oily fatty salmon. Or you can also enjoy it with like a California roll with avocado and salmon. Hope you enjoy the sushi and Shunan pairing. Shunan loves sushi and sushi loves Shunan. Of course, we never forget pot stickers that Cathy and Ina loves. Goodbye.
There we go. Some very enthusiastic Japanese and wine combinations. Right, we've kept you from drinking your wine for far too long already. So let's move into the first of those. And the first of those is your Raats Original. It is, as was pointed out by Taku, an unwooded Chenin Blanc. So that will be the one on your left. So you're going to get lots and lots of fruit. Ken, in Bruer, we've got another fabulous lover of Chenin Blanc. His Twitter handle is Chenin King, so you know he does like Chenin Blanc. What are your thoughts? Give us an introduction to this wine.
Yeah, there's a couple of gentlemen in the room here who recognize him only because he's a grey boy as well. He's an old rugby playing guy for years. And Robert is a major supporter of Chenin. You really want to have him on your side, I'll tell you that much. A super bloke. And he makes this wine, he calls it his Raats Original, because as far as he's concerned, this is just the original flavor of Chenin Blanc. Unaltered, unchanged, no oak, no wood, no tricks, nothing up his sleeve. This is Chenin Blanc, pure Stellenbosch Chenin Blanc. And immediately you see, first of all, from delightful fresh color to that wonderful nose, the fruit on the nose, reminiscent immediately of quince, perhaps apple, some pears maybe, but very, very, there's wonderful fruit on this wine. And the wine looks and taste that, you'll see it's actually fairly light to medium body, but it's got a wonderful acidity and a wonderful freshness and brightness to it. And this should match very, very nicely with your swordfish, which is the swordfish on the rice. No wasabi on that rice. You're welcome to add some wasabi and challenge the Chenin. And then if you could do that very delicate little backflip and pop it into the soy, like that.
I landed up with just rice.
Yeah, we did this 17 times this morning before Ken finally got it right. So have a taste of that Chenin on its own, and then try it in partnership with the swordfish nigiri, which was freshly caught at a Tiavatas Club Dam earlier on this morning. And Cathy, as our resident Japanophile, if that's if that's a term we can use.
Expert is not such a good idea, but Japanophile I'll look to.
What's making this combination just right?
I think the purity of the wine. The Japanese palate, especially when they're eating really good food and good sushi, is that they just love the absolute purity of it. So they're always looking for a fine linear line in their wine, in their water, and in their sake. It's the thing that really grabs them and helps them gravitate towards that particular beverage. And I think this is showing wonderful purity and wonderful linearity. So it pairs lovely with the light swordfish that we have here, which was in the ocean yesterday.
It is indeed nice and fresh. What are the thoughts from all of you? Do you like the combination? Is there anything that sticks out from the wine, the food, the two of them together? Anybody have a particular thought? Angela looking deep in concentration here.
You're welcome to try these pairings with all the wines. These pairings are intended for wine number 1 and 2, and then the pot stickers for wine number 3 and 4. But there's no hard and fast rules here, except you may not add Coca-Cola for the rest of it.
I think why it does go together, the fish and prepares wine, is there's no fussiness to it. It's very straightforward, not complicated, very clean, just a lovely partnership. Neither one shouts against the other.
It's a beautiful partnership there. Has everybody mastered the art of flipping their nigiri over and just dipping in the fish and still keeping it within your chopsticks?
And that swallow dive into the soy sauce.
I'm not going to try. It's going to end up all over me. You're doing well.
All right. Well, there we go. There is our first one. It is a beautiful combination. How should we finish that one off, Ken? The second of our Chenin Blancs. I'll let you preview it while people are having their nigiri swordfish. And that's A. Badenhorst and Ardi in an industry that is full of characters. Even Ardi does stand out as something quite remarkable in all manner of ways.
Ardi is the wild man from the woods, and he's just about whatever he wants to be on a day, on any given day. He is the most incredible guy, has the most amazing collection of dead animals in glass boxes, including snakes, partridges, I mean, anything that you've ever thought of that possibly fitted into a glass box. He has one of those to show you. Probably got the original raccoon cap, I'm not sure. But Ardi makes wonderful wines as creatively as his life is. And this wine, this Secateurs, is from his Swartland soils. And there you see the effect, I believe, of Chenin Blanc telling you like it is. Chenin Blanc will explain where it comes from beautifully. And you've come from Stellenbosch fruit and kind of decomposed granite to Swartland, much hotter, much warmer, much longer days, bush vines, smaller berries, smaller bunches, thicker concentration on the skins, and the wine is immediately more mineral and less fruit expressive and has a completely different dimension to it, a different style to it. And this with the tuna, I think, is a great pairing, a great match.
Cathy, it's not something we'd see a huge amount of in the higher end Japanese restaurant, the California roll or maki roll as we know them here, but it's a great addition in terms of this particular wine. I think. What's the duet here? What's playing out nicely between the tuna and Ardi's Chenin?
Well, as much as the first wine, as Angela pointed out, the purity and the simplicity of both were talking to each other. I just think that with the fatty tuna and the rich mayo, you've got quite a rich piece of food here, but you've got such lovely depth and weight from Ardi's Chenin, so that it really matches up to the maki in your mouth.
All right. Well, if you haven't already, give the Ardi Badenhorst Chenin a try, and then try some with the tuna roll. Which are all made our chef today, Ken?
Our chefs today, Charlene's in the back, Charlene from Genki. All of you who know the square in Stellenbosch, we're the best sushi in town. And Charlene has very kindly come to spend the day with us and handmade and prepared all of our sushi for us. So a big shout out to Charlene.
Oh, that's another superb combination. For those of you who have tried it, thoughts on this wine? Thoughts on this wine with the tuna? Is it doing the job that you had hoped it would?
I think you need something to clean your mouth from the mayo. Not the mayo, the avo.
Yeah.
And that really does it. The acidity of the Chenin just lifts your mouth and cleans the palate.
Right. And the Chenin Blanc Association is obviously supporting today, Ken. It should be a public holiday. This really, I think we're all agreed on that.
It is.
Every day is a public holiday when you're Ken Forrester. What does today though mean to you as somebody who's watched the Chenin Blanc industry grow over the last 25 years?
You know, it's just hugely satisfying to see that Chenin Blanc has become South Africa's calling card. That people talk New Zealand, Sauvignon Blanc comes to mind. They talk Napa, you're thinking Cabernet, you're thinking Chardonnay. They talk South African wine, it's Chenin Blanc. It's the first thing that comes to mind. And it's become an international lingua franca for the wine industry, for the South African wine industry. And Chenin Blanc in all these different styles, as we see just the two that we've had so far in front of us, two totally different wines, working with totally different food. But once again, Chenin and sushi, Chenin standing up to the challenge of the salt and the heat and everything else. But Chenin Blanc has become the iconic South African wine, white wine at this stage. And, you know, I think that we've got a lot of work to do. The sad reality is in the data that tells us that for every 7 bottles of Sauvignon Blanc sold, we sell 1 bottle of Chenin. So Sauvignon Blanc is way ahead of us. We need to do a lot of work, and we'll keep on at it. We'll grow it. But it's nice to see the hipsters, the youngsters, the sons and daughters of my colleagues, same age as my kids, basically, coming to the front and who think that Chenin Blanc is just completely, oh yeah, of course we make Chenin Blanc. They think it's the most natural thing in the world. They have no idea that Chenin Blanc 25 years ago wasn't the most natural thing in the world. So it's grown well, and it'll grow some more.
It's a terrific story, and it's why we're all here today. Our pot stickers will be joining you now as we move on to our Chenins 3 and 4. As you finish off your sushi, we're going to show you a very short video, and nobody has seen this yet. This is a global premiere. It is a look at a series we've put together with the Chenin Blanc Association in celebration of the grape. So here's the very first look at the trailer for Adventures in Chenin. Of all the grapes doing the South African wine story proud around the world, Chenin Blanc has to be top of the list. And so today and over the ensuing 9 weeks, I'm going to be hanging out in the winelands, meeting Chenin Blanc producers, chatting to the winemakers about just why we're getting Chenin Blanc so right at the moment, and then meeting some of our top chefs, pairing up food with that Chenin and really having a pretty indulgent time. Right, so welcome back to Ken Forrester Vineyards, where we find ourselves in the midst of some splendid company, some wonderful food, and some rather nice Chenin Blanc. We're down the sushi. Let's you get an idea. We've got an audience, you can't see them now. We've got about 800 people here at the moment who are drinking Chenin Blanc very excitedly. Just from a raise of hands, is there anybody who hasn't really had sushi and Chenin before, but has now decided this is the way forward? Has anybody been converted, or were you all converts already? All converts already. All right, I'm very glad to hear it. So we've got something a little different now. We've had the sushi, and I think it was really good. It was fresh. It played off that Chenin beautifully. We've now got something that, to me, Cathy, doesn't seem quite as instantly Japanese. I think sushi, I think Japan straight away. If I see the dumplings, the pot stickers we have here, that's got a more pan-Asian feel to me. How Japanese is this as a dish?
Well, as far as I know, it's eaten in many, many countries in Asia, but it's also quintessential Japanese to me because I find it everywhere I go to. And in fact, they're best consumed at 2 o'clock in the morning after several bottles of Chenin Blanc and a couple of beers.
We might still be here.
Well, if we ask Ken a particularly good question, we certainly could. So we've got here, Ken, as I can see, we've got some oxtail pot stickers. Those are the ones with the little hint of orange spice on. There's also some chili and spice, and this can't be something to have with wine. Surely is Chenin Blanc up to that sort of challenge?
So I think it is. We're looking at the two on the left, oxtail in here, and with that, with the chili, do help yourself to a little bit of chili. It's not strong. You can actually, it's quite harmless, but we want to challenge the Chenin just a little, and the wine we're about to challenge, is the wine from the Bot Rivera, as you'll be told from the winemaker himself. Sebastian refers to himself as the Bot Rivera. Obviously, he's talking about Bot River, and Bot River has its very own microclimate near the Atlantic. It's a very cool space, and they produce magnificent Chenins. This from a very concentrated vineyard, and named for his grandmother, Hope Marguerite. A feisty woman by all accounts, and knowing his mum, I should think that's very accurate indeed. So here you are, a lovely, richer style of Chenin Blanc, barrel fermented, and we have the pot sticker here with some, believe it or not, yes, red meat, looking at oxtail and chili. I mean, what could be more of a challenge to a wine?
Let's look at that challenge, Cathy. You've got an iconic, I think, South African Chenin Blanc. There's a little bit more residual sugar to this particular vintage, but it's got quite a job. It's certainly, as the sommelier's residence here at Ken Forrester, it's a slightly richer wine. It's a very rich dish. It's oxtail. There's a bit of spice. How are these going to come together, and can the Chenin hope to stand up?
I think the Chenin is going to stand up. I think it's going to knock the chili out, or at least mellow the chili. And I've tasted at a particular wine tasting competition in Sydney, where we used to match food with wine on the final day, and I was judging heavy Australian reds with a particularly fiery curry, and the Australian reds couldn't tame the tannin and they couldn't tame the chili. So I think the fruit is in this wine, plus the acidity, is going to put the chili in a new context.
All right, there we go. That is the thoughts of our Asian food expert and master of wine, Cathy. Try the Haute Marguerite if you haven't already, and then try it with that oxtail pot sticker. And maybe try one with the chili, one without the chili. And what I think you should find is that chili just brings out more of the fruit, and you get a sense of just how wonderfully rich this Haute Marguerite is. What I particularly like about it is it's oxtail you don't have to worry about the bone with, which is always the greatest annoyance when eating oxtail. So try them out. I'm seeing a lot of smiles out there. Is it thumbs up for the combination? Do we like them? We do indeed. We do indeed. That's come together rather well. And there will be people who will tell you very rigidly you can't possibly drink white wine with red meat. Well, here's a great example of why you most certainly can.
Absolutely. Perfect.
All right. So we are three of our Chenin Blancs down, and I think we've probably hit the peak when it comes to the Beaumont Haute Marguerite, because we now drop the quality substantially, I'm afraid, and we try something called the Ken Forrester FMC, which this is iconic. I've seen this at restaurants all over the world, and it's a wine that delivers on this mad idea you had so many years ago, Ken, when you arrived here. You'd left the restaurant, you'd come down to the winelands, decided you knew absolutely everything about an industry you'd never been involved with, and told everybody you were going to put Chenin Blanc in wood and make the best white wine in the world, and everybody laughed you out of town. But you stayed on, and what we have now on the FMC is the wine that really has delivered on that vision of yours.
Dan, it is the dream wine. This is a wine that I dreamt up, the wine that we've got a vineyard planted in 1970 and another vineyard in 72. And we harvest these vineyards, we go back into the vineyard, we select and reselect and go back up to 10 different times. And each time we select a small batch of grapes to harvest, hand-picked obviously, we then take those and we make a wine, maybe 2 barrels or 3 barrels of wine at a time. And at the end of the harvest, we might have 30 barrels put together, and we'll look at all of these, and then a year later, after fermentation, we'll go and find what I believe to be the best barrels by the way they fit together. It's really about putting together the jigsaw of how this works. And there's always some botrytis. There's always, the botrytis will ferment dry, but there's always some barrels that don't ferment entirely dry. We mark those during the year. We know who the culprits are, and we'll make up the wine, and then we'll come back and we'll start adding some of that wine which hasn't fermented completely, which means it's slightly lower in alcohol, higher in acid, and higher in residual sugar. We do that, then we work to a point where we believe there's a balance, and at that point, we send the sample to the lab to discuss and to define what it is. We do no chemistry whatsoever until we finalize the blend. And this, with a pork dumpling and some of the chili and some of that sauce, I think you're going to find a wonderful challenge. And it's a big wine, it's a rich wine, but this is a very young wine. It's a 2019, and this wine is planned to last for 20 years. So this is early days, early days. Try it and you'll see it'll open up completely with the challenge of the spice.
Ken, what was that vintage you served us a few weeks ago that you'd taken out? But that was your...
In 2009?
That's
Old
right.
Vine Reserve
Old
was
Vine
2007.
Reserve. It was absolutely beautiful. I took it home to Philip and we couldn't believe it was that old.
Yeah.
It was drinking really beautifully.
Chenin ages that well.
Chenin ages
And
that
then
well.
we make this in the style. It's incredibly tight now, but it has to be if it's going to age.
If we look back, we've got somebody like Angela, who's been a platter taster for many years. Your wine career, if you go back to the early days where Chenin Blanc was the stuff of 4-day headaches and inexpensive investments, would you have believed going back 30 years ago that today we'd be looking at a Chenin Blanc that's selling for 500, 600, 700 rand, depending on where you're buying it, that Chenin Blanc had the potential to occupy this kind of space?
Well, I think if I think back 30, 35 years ago, the only Chenin I really knew as quality Chenin was Sauvignon, or something from Vouvray. And I remember Richard Kelly showing us one morning a wine which asked us to say how old we thought it was. And I think every single person there, and there were about 12 of us tasting that morning, said, oh, yes, it's quite old. We think it's about 15 years old. And that particular wine, which was a Sauvignon, was 35 years old. So they foxed us completely. But since then, we've grown. We've learned a lot. We know we've still got lots more to learn, but we've learned a lot. And no, at that stage, I didn't think I'd be drinking a Chenin from South Africa as good as that Chenin that I had all those years ago. But it's proven me wrong, or proven Ken right.
Don't tell Ken that. He'll never let you forget you said it. So Chenin finds itself in such an exciting space. Let's just get a thought from the floor. Our final food and wine combination, the pork playing off the FMC 2019. Are we in approval? Again, plenty of thumbs up. Right?
800 thumbs up.
800 thumbs up. 1,600 thumbs up.
Some of us feed 800 people with the dumpling.
Ken, this wine, the FMC, it's a flagship not just of Chenin Blanc, but South African wine as a whole. You've been making it for so long. You know this vineyard back to front. You should, in theory, know what's coming and know what every single vintage is going to taste like. And yet it still has that capacity to take you by surprise and to offer up something that you might not be expecting, that you might not have thought was coming.
Every vintage, Dan, I have I think the most frustrating question, or the fact that I'm frustrated, I don't know the answer. People say to me, what makes a good vintage? Well, it's rather one bad event, rain at the wrong time, could make a bad vintage. What makes a good vintage would be a kind of Zuma number of 1,077 things that all have to work, all have to go right. And it's unpredictable. It's nature at large. And every single vintage, we go through that vineyard, we work through that vineyard. We're familiar with the vineyard, we know the weak spots, we know the strong spots. And we still go through and take a photograph, look at the vineyard from the top, confirm what we see on the ground, and then we still go and pick. And it's not until we've actually picked the fruit, made the wine, that we get to the point where we have some understanding of what it's going to look like. And then we still have to get to the assemblage of the 10 different parts. So it's a mystery every year. It's a mystery.
It's a wonderful mystery, and it's one we get to revel in as drinkers of Chenin Blanc. Before we come to the end of what's been a very special broadcast from here at Ken Forrester, it's some great company and some lovely wine. Chenin Blanc has come so far, Cathy, in the last 25 years. It's in a great space. It's telling the world about South African wine in such a wonderful and successful way. Now that we've got here, where do we need to go over the next few years with Chenin Blanc?
Keep doing what we're doing right. Protect what you've got at all costs, because it is South Africa's calling card in so many countries. And the wine industry has a long memory. So as long as you keep making brilliant Chenin, they're going to keep believing that you can do it. And then the world's your oyster.
And Ken, you've got that world we saw earlier, Taku, people in Japan drinking your wine, drinking South African Chenin, one of many, many countries doing that. We're in a really, really good space. What for you is the next stage of this Chenin Blanc journey?
Dan, I think we want to see Chenin continuing to grow. As I said, there's a lot of work to do. I think more and more people are being turned on to Chenin. Chenin is just far more, I think, it has much more opportunity of different foods. It has a much broader palette. If somebody comes around to your home and they particularly wanted a Sauvignon Blanc and you gave them something as bright as the Raats Chenin Blanc, they'd be quite happy with that. And if they wanted a Chardonnay and you gave them something like the Sebastian's Hope Marguerite, they'd be quite happy with that. Chenin sits across a very broad shelf of flavor. And I think more and more people are being switched on to that and understanding that. And Chenin ages beautifully. When Chenin's 3 or 4 or 5 years old, it's delicious. It gets better with age. It really improves. It gets more complex. So there's so much going for Chenin. I think it's its own greatest fan, and it'll continue to do well.
Well, today's evidence that certainly will. You've had the chance to try some great food, but hopefully it's also encouraged you in time going forward to try Chenin with anything and everything and have fun with it. And if you want some very, very objective and very balanced perspective on what wine ever to have with food, then you can speak to Ina from the Chenin Blanc Association, who'll give you a very balanced recommendation that you should have Chenin Blanc with absolutely everything all of the time. We're going to be hanging in with our guests for a little longer. We've got some dessert to run through. I see Melissa Sutherland's watching this at the moment, saying she loves Chenin. Other people watching around the world, thank you for joining us. Andrew Wilgo, North Carolina, saying happy Chenin Day, guys. What on earth are you doing up this early in North Carolina? Cheryl Hunter. Exactly. What's wonderfully with Cocoa Pops? Cheryl Hunter, I've recently discovered the joy of Chenin. Thanks, Cathy Van Sale. Well, thank you, Cheryl. Ruth Barnes, I love South African Chenin, especially Ken, so she's probably a relative of Ken's. Yegas Naidu, lovely to see the king of Chenin, Ken Forrester. You've got this army of fans, don't you? Notneba Luchaba, the pop stickers sound crazy, delicious oxtail. I can tell you, Notneba, they are certainly fabulous. Beth Barnes, Hope Marguerite is a definite favorite. It certainly is, and it has proved that here today. And Notneba, talking about those pop stickers, they really are terrific. So great collection of food. And Ruth would love to try the pot stickers and Ken Forrester combination. I think she means the wine rather than Ken himself, but he is a bit of a symbol when it comes to the wine world. Wherever you've been watching around the world, thank you for joining us here at Ken Forrester here at Somerset West. We're off to finish off the rest of this Chenin Blanc. Drink Chenin today, keep drinking Chenin, support South African wine, and a big thank you to Ina and the Chenin Blanc Association, to Cathy Van Zyl and to Ken Forrester, and to the 800 VIP guests we've had with us here today.